unaffordable. Member for Thornhill.
Across the country, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are struggling, and they're struggling with 40-year highs in inflation. They're struggling with the highest interest rates in the G7. They are struggling with the highest housing prices on record. Gas, groceries, home heating, those aren't luxuries. They never have been. But they are getting further and further out of reach for Canadians, and that's an indictment of a government that stands in this place every day claiming to understand the pain of Canadians while simultaneously raising taxes on them. Over and over again in this House, we have called for the government to cancel all planned tax increases, including the payroll tax hikes planned for January 1st and the tax hikes on gas, groceries, and home heating planned for April 1st. And today we do it again as I stand in this House on behalf of those in Thornhill and Canadians across the country to support the motion that will commit to no new taxes on gas, groceries, home heating, and paychecks. I hope this is a wake-up call to a government that continues to tell Canadians that they've never had it better and that this is an entirely global problem. Imagine that in 2008, during the last financial crisis, anyone in this House would raise in their seats and tell Canadians there is no problem here and that the whole world is facing the issue, so we shouldn't be all that concerned because some platitude, something arbitrary. Imagine the backlash. The good news is that we were better positioned to be able to bring forward an economic action plan back then that had Canada last into the recession and first out. And that's not going to be the case. Talking more about statistics on debt to GDP ratio and credit ratings we've heard as a justification for these tax increases is simply out of touch. Credit ratings don't buy gas. Credit ratings don't buy winter jackets. Credit ratings don't buy work boots. Credit ratings don't buy the things that Canadians need. And now Liberals want to add to that struggle. They want to take more of Canadians' hard-earned money. They want to ignore the well-being of everyday people who desperately need relief. I hear it. I'm sure they do too. They want to divide them and call them names, and perhaps they might understand that those have consequences. But given today's debate, I'm not sure that they do. I don't know how you classify the Liberal tax plan as anything other than a tax plan. Although I think we've heard countless references to words like contributions, funds, taxes by another name. Like almost all members in this House, I hear from my constituents every day whose kids can't afford a home, some who can't afford to get to work, who can't afford to feed their family nutritious diets. We need to ask ourselves, are more taxes the real solution to this affordability crisis? Is doubling down on the same approach that got us into this mess is the way to get us out? The Liberals and the NDP say yes. The Conservatives say no, and Canadians pay a vast amount of their income taxes to this government, and only the Liberals and the NDP, as their dance partners, would think that that number needs to go higher rather than lower. If the government was at all in touch with the economic reality, they'd know that you can't tax your way to balanced budgets. You can't tax your way to prosperity, and more spending is not going to get inflation under control. If the debate in this House is about what is a tax or what isn't a tax, I thought I'd share a few ways that the government is actually taxing Canadians, making life harder, because that seems unclear to the other side today. On paychecks, the finance minister admitted that she wants to raise EI premiums by $2.5 billion and not even fund EI. CPP premiums are on the rise, and payroll taxes on the average Canadian worker are about $700 higher than they were when Conservatives left office. In the energy sector, Liberals imposed a carbon tax. It started at $30 a tonne, then $40, now $50. They promised Canadians before the election that it would never go higher. But we should have known better, because the Environment Minister's plan is to triple the carbon tax to $170 a tonne. They are tripling the carbon tax 3 times. Times 3. You will pay 3 times more than you do now. They want to add an extra 40 cents a litre to gas to go with the 40-year high and inflation. They tell Canadians to get more They tell Canadians that they get more than they pay, and that's not true. The parliamentary budget officer agrees. And worse, emissions in this country have risen every single year except for the year that the country was shut down. Tripling the price without even making a dent in emissions and presenting that they are returning that money to Canadians doesn't make a whole lot of sense. On tax credits, the Liberals promised a rebate for all consumers forced to pay their punitive carbon tax. But this year, the average household in Ontario, a place where I'm from, they pay $360 more in carbon taxes than they get back. So there really is no justification. It doesn't work. You pay more than you get back. And it's going up to 3 times. On food, the Prime Minister's increased taxes on farmers' pay and decreased amount of output that they produced. Let's not forget, it comes at a time when the world is hurting for crops and our agricultural products, and now struggling families across Canada are paying record prices for staples like bread and meat and vegetables, and tripling that carbon tax makes everything that needs to be transported even more expensive. And let's not forget about the inflation tax, the invisible tax, eating away at Canadians' paychecks, brought on by 7 years of inflationary deficits and reckless spending. The government knew this would happen. It's not like there wasn't a warning. We knew that creating cash and running deficits causes inflation, and the Leader of the Opposition, the member from Carleton, has been saying so since 2020. Mr. Speaker, they told us that interest rates would stay low. They told us that the carbon tax wouldn't go up. They told us that the problem was deflation, not inflation. Do we not have record inflation? Do we not have a plan to triple the carbon tax? Are we not experiencing some of the highest interest rate hikes since the 1990s? This has confirmed what we knew all along, that we can't rely on this government to manage the nation's economy, and we can't trust them with workers' paychecks. Canadians need relief, but it's clear that this government, once again, is going to keep us on the wrong path, and that they have no plan to take us off of it and put us on the right one. Let's actually start with the federal budget. I've actually been a part of federal budgets before, at a time where they were balanced. The last one, actually, that was balanced. The Liberals proposed last spring was a book of words. It didn't have a plan. It didn't even have a vision for the future of our nation. And then they voted down our plan to scrap the carbon tax. They nixed the motion to scrap the GST on gas and diesel to help struggling Canadians. And they refused to act to bring down the price to buy a home, or frankly commit to any meaningful housing stock to build more. And to this day, they refuse to rein in the inflationary federal spending, driving that number to go up and not down. Like I said at the beginning of my speech, Canadians are struggling, and judging by the debate in this place, it seems like we're the only ones listening. And I'm sure they're having the same conversations in their ridings as I am in mine. And our job is to turn that struggle into hope. And whether it's about travel restrictions, punitive vaccine mandates, taxes, the economy, or anything else, we're the ones proposing solutions, unlike the government has accused this side of the House of not doing, and fighting for Canadians. Our motion on the table addresses inflation at its core by putting a stop to the out-of-control tax hikes and reckless spending. And it's not just me asking for this motion to pass, but also Canadians from coast to coast. 7 out of 10 people say that money is a major issue for them. 53% of people there say they were within $1,000 of insolvency. Canadians are using food banks, 51%. Students living in homeless shelters while they study. Those are facts. To bring back optimism, to make Canada, again, the economic engine that it could be in the world, Canadians can be assured that we will be here every day to ask the hard questions about why this is happening in this country, to put our ideas forward, and to advocate for the millions left behind. We are laser focused on the economy and taxes because it's too important to the country not to be. And it's time to put people back into their actual plans when they think about tripling the carbon tax or when they think about raising taxes on Canadians. It's time to let them finally keep their hard-earned money. It's time for the Liberals to answer the millions of Canadians calling for relief, and supporting this motion will give Canadians the relief that they are asking for. And I hope that members of this House agree. Thank you.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'll ask the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party the same question that I have repeatedly asked the Leader of the Conservative Party. What is the Conservative Party's position on cryptocurrency?
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, 40-year highs in inflation, taxes that are going up on January 1st, on April 1st, and this is what the member opposite is talking about. His constituents ought to see this. Instead of voting for tax relief, instead of voting to cancel the tripling of the carbon tax, he's talking about cryptocurrency. That's a shame.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. The Honourable Member for Hamilton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, we've heard the Conservatives go on and on and on about the cost of everything, but it's clear they know the value of nothing in this House, because if they were really serious about workers, they wouldn't be trying to attack pensions and employment contributions, and in particular the co-pays. Because, Mr. Speaker, if they were truly concerned about putting money in the pockets of everyday people, they'd be supporting our efforts to raise the actual wages, Mr. Speaker. And we hear them heckling across the way, right? But my question through you to the Honourable Member is, does the Honourable Member not agree the quickest and best and most sustainable way of putting money into the pockets of everyday workers is improving their wages and not taking away their employer co-payments?
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It must be a rude awakening that the leader of that member's party isn't invited to their own convention for a people that they used to represent in Saskatchewan. They used to be the party of workers. Canadians paychecks have gone taxes on their paychecks have gone from $3,400 to $4,100. It's a $700 increase. If the member doesn't understand that that is too high and Canadians can't afford it, I'm not sure what his party represents.
Questions and